Hi all, welcome to the first session of Azure Data Factory playlist. In this playlist, we are going to delve deep into Azure Data Factory activities and the configuration of each and every activity and what those configurations are all about and when to use which configuration. But before we go into that, we have to first set up our development environment. In the development environment, the basic thing is you have to have an Azure subscription, which is either free subscription or pay as you go subscription. Then we are going to create a resource group and we are going to provision an Azure Data Factory V2 instance and an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 account. When we are done with provisioning all these resources, we are going to configure them in order to get the hands-on environment ready. So without any further delay, let's get started. So you have to go to your browser and you have to log into your Azure portal. In this Azure portal, we are going to create a new resource group. This is going to be our main resource group where we are going to do all our hands-on. The best part of having all the resources in one resource group is that whenever you are done with your activity, you can delete the resource group and which will delete all the underlying resources, and that way you can reduce your cost on Azure. So I'm giving it a name. Let's say I'm giving Azure Data Factory resource group. I'm going to use Central India region. Everything is looking good. I'm going to click on create. Resource group is created. As you can see, Azure Data Factory resource group is now on the top of the list. I'm going to go into this resource group, and the first thing that I'm going to provision is a data factory. So you have to search data factory in the marketplace. Click on data factory, click on create. Now since already provisioning this resource, we are already provisioning this resource in a resource group. By default, the resource group is being populated by the Azure. If you want to create a new resource group, you can do it, but it is always a good practice to first create the resource group in which you want to spin up the resources. Now I'm going to give the data factory instance a name. Data factory demo, which is already taken. So you have to give a globally unique name. Okay, this one is open, so I'm taking it. It is good to have everything provisioned in a region which is closest to you, so you can have a resource group in which you have multiple resources, and make sure that all those resources that you are provisioning are part of the region which is closest to you. So in my case it is Central India, so that is why I have created the resource group in Central India region, and I'm creating my data factory instance as well in the same region. Version V2. Earlier it was V1 and V2 both, but now only V2. So we are going with V2. This is the latest version of Azure Data Factory. You have to click on review and create. Everything is looking good. Forget configuration, networking, advanced, and tags. You just ignore these tabs for now. We need the basic data factory instance, and whatever customizations those four tabs offer, we can do it later as well. So now deployment is in progress. Let's go to the steps that we are going to cover in this session. So in this first step, we created the resource group. Now we are on the step 2 where we are provisioning an Azure Data Factory V2 instance, and it is pretty quick. So as you can see, it is already done. Now I am not going to go into resource group resource. I'm going to go into resource group. Here it takes some time to reflect the resource that we have provisioned. So now you can see we now have our data factory provisioned in the Azure Data Factory resource group. So we are done with the second step as well. Now the next step we have in our agenda is we have to create an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen to enable storage account. So in order to create a data lake in Azure cloud, you create Azure storage with a setting that converts that storage from a normal blob storage into a data lake. So for that, we are going to click on create. Again, it is a storage account, so we have to search storage account in marketplace. We click on storage account, we click on create. Again, it is a best practice to go into resource group first and then click on create. That way you can make sure that whatever resources you are provisioning, they are going to be the part of the resource group that you are intending it to be. So Azure Data Factory resource group, that's fine. Now here also we have to give a globally unique name. That means a name that is already taken by somebody cannot be taken by you. So whatever I am going to give in the storage account name, you will not be able to use that same name for your storage account until I am not deleting it. Okay, so I'm using ADF demo ADLS Gen 2 account. Okay, I'm going to use standard. This is going to be locally redundant storage. Make sure you choose this and standard in order to reduce your cost on Azure cloud. Now this is the important part. In the advanced tab, in order to convert your storage account to a data lake, you have to enable hierarchical namespace. This one you must check and leave rest as it is. You don't need to touch anything else. In the networking also, keep everything as default. In the data protection, I don't think I need the soft delete options, although if you want to keep it, you can keep it. There is no problem keeping them checked, but I personally don't prefer them checked because we don't need whatever is deleted. Generally these options are used when you want to maintain a kind of step where if anything is deleted by mistake, you want to get that back. So that is why soft delete option is there. So even if it is deleted after 2 3 days, if you want to get that record or get that file back, you can get it. So we don't need it here, so I'm keeping it unchecked. For encryption, I am going to let Microsoft manage the encryption using Microsoft manage keys. So that is going to be default. Blobs and files only, keep everything as it is. Tags, I'm not going to give anything, and now it is reviewing my settings. If everything looks good, there is no complaint from the Microsoft Azure, click create. Now, this is the third step that we are on. We are creating an Azure Data Lake Storage into enable storage account. Once this storage account deployment is complete, we will have two most basic elements for practicing our Azure Data Factory skills. Azure Data Factory normally works on a data lake. We follow ELT approach in Azure Data Factory. So we first extract the data from the source, we keep it in a data lake, which is called load operation, and then whatever data is loaded into our data lake, we perform transformations on that using our data factory. In the earlier days, like in case of tools like Informatica, Pentaho, and those kind of tools, we generally followed ETL approach, although they are also advancing to this ELT model, but they traditionally were ETL. So they used to extract, transform, and then load the data. In this case, in the case of ADF, we follow ELT approach. That is, first extract the data from the sources, put it in the data lake, that is load operation, and then once the data is loaded into the data lake, then whatever transformations you want to perform, do that using your data factory. Now this resource is already provisioned. Go to your resource group. Now you have a data factory instance and your ADLS Gen 2 account. Now we are going to go on our fourth step. In the fourth step, we want to make sure that we are able to access the data. When I say access the data, it means we can put the data, delete the data, we can read the data by using the web browser in the data lake as well as from the ADF. So ADF should also be able to do all those things into the data lake for the data that we are going to work on. So we are going to go into our data factory and we are going to configure the access. So first things first, let me configure access for myself. It is best to use role-based access control with the data lake. So I'm going to assign a role for my identity. The role that I'm going to assign myself is storage blob data owner. This is going to give me the full access on the data lake. Next, skip the conditions and review and assign. My role is added as a storage blob data owner. If you want to confirm it, you click on view my access and you can see storage blob data owner added to this resource. Now data factory should also have the access in order to work with the data that is there in the data lake. So for the data factory, we have to create another role assignment, and the role that we are going to give to the data factory is storage blob data contributor. So it can read, write, and delete. So data factory will be able to read, write, and delete the data from the data lake, but will not be able to perform any storage account level operation. That means you will not be able to like delete the containers and everything. So you can do everything with the data that is stored inside the container, but you will not be able to do anything in the container on the container itself. So it's like you can have access to read, write, select on the table of a database, but you will not be able to delete or drop the table itself. So I'm choosing storage blob data contributor. Here it is going to be the managed identity. It is going to show me the data factory managed identity. So I have two data factories with me. I'm going to use ADF demo receive. This is in your Azure Data Factory RG. Fine. And this is okay. So this is the data. So every resource, every data factory has an identity assigned by Microsoft to it. So you can use that identity to grant any kind of role on the data lake. So I am using that system assigned managed identity for the data factory that I have just provisioned. So this is done. ADF demo receive. Now I'm going to review and assign. Done. Now go into role assignments, and if you want to check, you have storage blob data contributor role on ADF demo receive. That is going to be the data factory with which we are going to do our hands-on, and I have storage blob data owner role on this data lake storage account, and we are good with our configuration of the access part. So fourth step is done. Now we want to create a storage container. So those who are familiar with AWS, they know that like S3, there in S3 we create a bucket. In our data lake, we create a container, and that container holds the files that we want to work with. So we go to storage browser, and in the storage browser, we are going to go to blob containers. In blob container, I'm going to create container and I'm going to name it as data. So the data is ready. Now we can have a directory which is known as input. So you can have a chain, a list of directories. Like in that input, you will have another, let's say, um, I'm going to give the year 2024. So I'm going to add 2024, save. So like that, we can have multiple levels of directory. So we are in the data container in the input directory, and then in that input we have 2024 directory. So now we are good with our setup. We have a data factory instance, we have our Azure data lake, we have configured the access for us as well as for the data factory, and now we are good to explore the data factory. So that was the first session. In the coming session, we are going to look into the copy activity and what are the different options that copy activity has for us. So thank you so much. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like my content. Thank you so much.